Hello and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Hannah. Happy Halloween! And I know this video will be up after Halloween, but today is the last day of October and I'm dressed like this because we're gonna go out for an early dinner. No costume parties or anything like that. I'm in France. Halloween isn't exactly the biggest holiday here. Tomorrow is actually a holiday here where everything is closed and everything. So yeah. So I haven't done this in a hot minute, but today is going to be the start of a reading vlog. This book I picked, well, I kind of had my eye on it since the beginning of the year, but Books and Lala picked it for her October book club pick, and so that kind of encouraged me to purchase it for myself, and that is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. So I just realized a little bit ago that I just started listening to the audiobook version of his other book, The Only Good Indians. So I will kind of be reading two of his books in tandem. I'm probably like a third of the way in The Only Good Indians, and that has been completely different from what I expected, but is actually pretty interesting, so that's giving me good vibes and high hopes for this one. So this just came out at the end of August, I believe, of this year. It is a horror thriller, and let's read the description together. It says, "Some girls just don't know how to die." Jade Daniels is an outcast, half Indian, with an abusive father and absent mother, in Proof Rock, a town that wants nothing to do with her. Now, one class away from dropping out of school, she is pouring her life and soul into her last assignment, a personal history of horror films. That sounds pretty interesting so far. But Proof Rock doesn't rest easy. As blood spills in the lake and violent stories refuse to stay buried, Jade's encyclopedic knowledge of horror cinema begins to make sense of everything happening in the rapidly gentrifying rural lake town. And with the arrival of the final girl, Letha Mondragon, what kind of name is that? She's convinced an irreversible sequence of events has been set into motion. As Jade dives deep into the history of her hometown, the missing tourists, the drowned church in Indian Lake, the tragic deaths at camp years ago, the town strives to keep her trapped, but outcasts still laugh and fight and cry and love fiercely, and even as the terror descends and the blood flows, they never ever give up. So as you probably know, I'm pretty into horror, so the fact that the main character in this is as well is pretty interesting to me, because usually the main characters in any horror media, like, they don't know they're in a horror story. So I think that's going to be an interesting twist on it. Also, I see the main character is half Indian, so I'll have to look up if maybe the author is Indian himself, since The Only Good Indians obviously has to do with Native Americans as well. So on this cold, rainy, dark Halloween day, I am finally going to start this, pretty much a month late, but hopefully I can finish this before the live show that Books and Lala puts on with her co-hosts. So let's get into it. Ooh, this lighting really brings out the bags under my eyes. So today is November 1st, only 2 months left of the year. It is Toussaint here, so it's a holiday and most things are closed, but the sun is actually out today. It's pretty much been rainy all week, so we might actually go for a walk. So that would be nice in the sunshine, although it seems a bit windy. But anyway, I started this last night and I read a little bit more this morning, and I'm on page something, if I can figure out my bookmark. 76. So the first chapter of this is actually really interesting. It's kind of like most slasher books I've read, where it starts out with a crime, and I'm not really sure from there though. The main character, I am very unsure about how I feel about her. The whole thing is a bit different than I was expecting. I knew that the main character was going to be into slasher horror, which is actually one of the genres that I'm not really fond of when it comes to horror, but I've seen a lot of them, I know a lot about them, and just the horror references, I really can't talk today, I knew I was really going to enjoy, and that is the case. However, the main character, she definitely has some mental illnesses. She is not well. Content warning, in like the first 30 pages, she does attempt suicide. So that's pretty much our introduction to her character. So it's just kind of extreme right off the bat. But she essentially wants her life to be a slasher movie. So the things she says and does, she kind of is doing everything on purpose to elicit certain reactions from people. So it's a bit frustrating and a little annoying, I guess. And it's odd, like she definitely doesn't react to things in a logical manner. She doesn't seem to be able to talk about anything besides slasher movies. Like she kind of just word vomits facts and just doesn't stop. And she analyzes everything that's happening as a possible plot point in like a slasher film. And she incorporates this just into everything of her life. Like that is just her personality. But she does something at the end of the chapter I just read that I'm really not okay with and just isn't logical in any way. And I just can't believe that a person would kind of react that way. So I'm a bit frustrated with her right now and not exactly liking her at the moment. Because it almost feels like just because someone likes horror, they have to have something wrong with them, I guess. I don't know. It's her... How do I explain this? Like, it almost just kind of seems like if you are a normal person, you can't enjoy horror. Like, all the other characters in this book are just completely bewildered by the things she says and don't understand anything. And it's like, is she literally like the only person watching movies in this entire town? So yeah, it's a bit frustrating in that aspect, I guess. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm explaining that well. But the story itself, I definitely am finding interesting. I definitely want to read more. Like, I feel like this is a book that I could definitely binge, but I'm not gonna do that. At least I don't think so. But it's definitely been a varied start. So we went outside because there was sun, and instead it got really dark and started raining on us. So that was short-lived. It is Wednesday, November 3rd, I think, and I am 153 pages into this. There is the bookmark. So I didn't get to read it all yesterday, but I read quite a bit today. The chapters in this are really long, actually. I wish they were a little bit shorter, but also this book is slow. And I really wasn't expecting that. Like, all the descriptions and everything makes it seem like it's going to be pretty fast-paced, but it's been pretty slow so far, and I'm really hoping it's going to pick up a bit because it's getting a little boring and kind of repetitive, as it's pretty much just this main character, Jade, just associating everything she does with horror, and it's just been that over and over and over. So hopefully the plot starts moving along now. I probably won't be able to read any more today, as soon we're going to be heading to the theater with some friends to watch The Eternals, which just came out today, I think it is, here in France, and we're going to have dinner afterwards. Today is Friday, and all I can say is that this construction is driving me up the wall. It's killing both my husband and I. It's been 2 weeks now, and it starts as early as 8 a.m., and luckily they're on lunch break right now, which is the only way I can do this because, like, I can't even read during the day because it's so loud and obnoxious and just, like, kills my head. And it's so loud, my desk vibrates. Like, it is just the worst. It's drilling and hammering, and I really can't stand it. But let's see. The other day we went and saw the Eternals, and the only thing I'm going to say about that is I'm going to quote my husband in saying it was a Marvel movie that felt like a DC movie. So take that for what you will. This morning I went to the library. I pretty much had to return books where I only read 1 out of 3, so my October reading just didn't work out well. In this one, I'm on page 220, and I'm like just about the halfway mark, and nothing's happening. So if you don't like slow burn, definitely don't pick this up, because there's just not much going on. And what is happening, oh, I see Ori moving in the bottom right. But what is happening is just kind of meh, not exactly the most interesting. It is getting a bit darker though, like they're talking about some pretty dark subjects, but for being like a book about slashers, there isn't a lot of slashing going on. So I just don't know what to think at this point. I did go on the Literally Dead Book Club's Goodreads page. That's the book club that Books and Lala runs. And I saw that a lot of people DNF'd it after the first section, and I kind of can't blame them because, like, this definitely isn't what I think most people were expecting. Horror movies are usually pretty fast-paced, especially slashers. Like, I mean, it's pretty much all about the murders and stuff, but there's only been, like, the ones that were in the first chapter and maybe another one, but we don't know for sure. And it's just kind of like, welp, just waiting for stuff to happen. So hopefully that happens soon. It is now Friday. Don't mind all the cat hair on this hoodie. And I just finished this literally a few minutes ago. And yeah. So okay, so it's gonna be kind of hard to talk about without spoiling anything, but I'm gonna do my best. 100% if you do not like slow burns, you will not like this book. The cat just opened the window. I'm not a fan of the ending. Nothing really happens until the last quarter of this book. Like, I pretty much had less than 100 pages left when I was finally getting into it, and that sucks when it's 440 pages. So definitely takes a long time of ramping up, and all that time beforehand is pretty much spent in the main character, Jade, in her head, and her thoughts are very, very rambly, and her fantasizing about slashers and stuff like that. So scenes feel very long, as you'll kind of start a scene, and then she kind of goes into her head and is like rambling and blah, 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 whatever, slasher stuff, and then you finally get back into what's happening in that scene. So they feel really long, and the chapters are also quite long themselves, and long chapters are never a favorite of mine, so that also kind of was meh. But Jade does get better as a character. In the beginning, I was pretty frustrated with her, and a bit angry with her at times and her actions. It's just kind of like, why would you do that? But the last quarter of the book, she definitely gets a lot better and is fine as a character overall. Like I said before, there are some pretty dark themes in here. I mean, not really counting the violence, obviously. It does get really gory and everything, and the whole slasher part finally freaking happens. But I guess the twists and stuff that happened in the last quarter here, no thanks. That's not what I was wanting from this. And there's some things I don't really understand, because there are some scenes that happen and it's like, okay, we know that happened in reality, but then it's ignored at the end. And so we don't really get answers from those earlier scenes. And so I'm just kind of left being like, I don't fully understand what happened here. So I do find this book to be a bit confusing, and because it does kind of end in the middle of the chaos a bit. So I am a bit frustrated in the end in not having some answers. I have no idea what I'm going to rate this, but it's definitely not going to be higher than a 3. I think this is definitely going to be like average or lower, especially because of how much of a slog it is to go through, and especially since the first chapter is easily the best in this book. Like, that hooked me in completely from the beginning, and then it just got boring. And then when things finally started picking up in that last quarter, I was interested again. But then that let me down with the ending, and so it was just kind of like, well, that was a pretty shitty journey. So definitely not what I was hoping for. Not exactly what the blurb gives off either. Like, it talks about her diving deep into the history of her hometown, and I thought they would go more into that than what they actually do. So that was a little bit disappointing as well. But yeah, slow burn. I don't know if I would call her an unreliable narrator, but she definitely has her own issues that she's working through. My cat is... Can you not, cat? Okay. So there's that. I forgot where I was going with this. Oh yeah. Okay, I remember now. You definitely need slasher knowledge, or you're really not going to understand what Jade's talking about at all. Like I said before, slasher isn't exactly my genre, so I didn't recognize all of the name drops and the movies and things like that, because she definitely talks a lot about movies that are from the 70s and 80s. So keep that in mind if you really like horror but not so much slashers, because pretty much everything she talks about and thinks about has to do with that genre. So if you know absolutely nothing about that, you will probably hate this book. So yeah, bit of a disappointment overall. I'm really interested to see what Books and Lala thinks of it with her live show and whoever her guests are on there. I haven't really checked anything about that yet, but I will be watching that to see their thoughts. And I'm probably going to go and read some reviews now and see if I missed something about this end, because I'm just a bit confused. But as always, thank you for hanging out with me, even though the books generally don't turn out the best. But until next time, bonne journée and au revoir.